this edition of Southern Newsweek, has the government cheated in its efforts to meet climate change obligations? Why a local academic says yes. Social service agency funding changes cause concern locally, while some say it's a step in the right direction. And a local woman is named the world's leading female cricketer, and she's hoping it'll have spin-offs for the sport. Kia ora, I'm Holly Buchanan. The government is under fire for reportedly cheating its way towards its international climate change obligations. A recently released report highlights the government's purchase of fraudulent Russian and Ukrainian carbon credits. That's been described as scandalous by a top local academic who has an alternative suggestion.
In the headlines for all the wrong reasons. It's just been revealed the government spent about $200 million of taxpayer money on bogus carbon credits from Russia and Ukraine. Emeritus Professor Sir Alan Marks says that's a scandal threatening the country's image.
New Zealand has to come clean. As they've said in the report, we're threatening our clean green image, we're threatening our nationality, our reputation as a responsible nation. This is very serious for New Zealand's reputation.
The Morgan Foundation report calls the carbon credits from Russia and Ukraine hot air because they didn't represent emissions reductions. Other countries refused to buy them, but New Zealand allegedly snapped them up while it was allowed, stockpiling enough for use until 2020.
If government knew that from 2013 and they're still proceeding with it, it's scandalous, nothing short of scandalous.
In buying cheap, baseless credits, the government seemingly forced their value down to almost nothing. That meant there was no incentive for the forestry industry to plant more trees, so the country saw mass deforestation and conversions to dairy. New Zealand's annual emissions have been increasing all the while, and now the country produces about 18 tonnes of greenhouse gases per person each year. The corresponding figure for the world is 7 tonnes per person, making New Zealand the fourth worst contributor.
New Zealand has got the highest proportion of these Ukrainian and Russian units of any country in the world.
The government's responded, saying it made the best decisions based on the rules at the time. It's reviewing the emissions trading scheme, for which public submissions close at the end of the month. Sir Alan will be putting his concerns in writing, but says the now worthless scheme should be replaced with a carbon tax. Rosie Mannins, 39, Dunedin News.
The spotlight is back on medicinal cannabis following the approval of its use in the second ever New Zealand case. Associate Health Minister Peter Dunn recently approved a new non-pharmaceutical grade product for a patient with Tourette's syndrome. But there's concern that a lot more research is needed to determine exactly how the products work.
Looking closely at the effects of a controversial product, University of Otago senior lecturer Dr. John Ashton is researching the possible health effects of cannabidiol, an active compound found in cannabis. It's different to THC, which causes a high in patients, something that's of particular interest as the conversation about the legalisation of medicinal cannabis heats up.
It doesn't cause that high, and it's not really a pain reliever, but it's thought it might help with some types of epilepsy. So all these things seem to get mixed up. So that my first thought is, if there's a push to legalise medicinal cannabis, exactly what are people talking about?
At this stage, there's still a lot that's unknown about cannabidiols and treating specific types of epilepsy. What Ashton is trying to do is narrow down the biochemistry of what the products actually do in the body. He says currently the cannabidiol treatments available overseas often haven't been widely tested, and that's concerning.
In America, they're treated not, these cannabidiol products aren't even regulated as pharmaceuticals, they're treated as dietary supplements. So the quality control is very poor. Some of them contain, some about 2/3 of them contain a different amount of THC than they claim. Some of them much more, some of them less.
Ashton says medicinal cannabis is a difficult research area, but one that a lot of academics around the world are focusing on. While he says the conversation about its use in New Zealand doesn't directly impact his research, it's a field in which information is lacking.
There's a demand for high quality clinical research, so a lot of the evidence that comes for epilepsy and cannabidiol comes from parent anecdote. and that's fairly low quality evidence. There's a great deal of risk of bias in seeing what you want to see.
Ashton's attempting to understand the science behind what goes on during clinical research trials to refer data back to those conducting them. It's a lengthy process, but one that could result in increased treatment options that are backed up by science. Ruby McAndrew, 39, Dunedin News.
Long-signalled changes to the way the country's social service agencies are funded is causing concern locally. A new government strategy requires charitable organisations to prove effectiveness in helping clients in order to retain funding. But some say it's a positive change that'll help streamline the sector.
Cutting through the jargon. The government's new long-term community investment strategy has come into effect, and it means big changes locally. It requires organisations to be more specific in proving the results that services are having in helping the community. It's a change that's been known about for almost 5 years.
It's probably been the biggest change that's happened in the last decade in the sector. And I think what's happened and what's caused the anxiety is that some of the organisations have probably tended to put this as being a low priority. And all of a sudden, as from the 1st of April, some of these changes are now taking effect, particularly around renewal of government contracts.
The Ministry of Social Development invests more than $300 million into community-based social services each year. While Shanks says the intensified focus on results may come across as the government putting pressure on social service groups, he thinks it's a positive change.
I think overall there is opportunity now for organisations to really sustain themselves by actually this collaboration or mergers to provide some strength that in the end is, at the end result, better well-being for our community and people within the communities.
He says it's now up to staff at individual organisations to decide whether they'll share resources with other agencies. Shanks says collaboration has the potential to help numerous groups streamline processes and put more emphasis on helping clients.
You can actually share that back office support, which is around administration, and allows the people within the organisation to focus on the delivery side of it, so that they're not burdened by having to find funding, funds through applications and all this sort of thing.
With the changes only a couple of weeks old, Shanks says it'll be a wait-and-see situation in coming months to judge what impact they'll have locally. The next round of Ministry of Social Development contracts will be announced soon, with the funding beginning in July. Ruby McAndrew, 39, Dunedin News.
Health professionals say fluoridating water in the wider Dunedin area could help in battling New Zealand's oral health problem. The government is planning to give district health boards the authority on fluoridation, taking it off council's hands. And a local academic says that's a right decision.
Fuelling the fluoride debate. Fluoridated water is likely to become more common as the Southern District Health Board may soon be able to decide whether to implement it all over the region. That's pleasing a local academic.
I think it's a long overdue decision, for many, many decades. Since the inception of water fluoridation back in the late 50s, early 60s, the decision has been left to territorial local authorities or, city councils.
The Health Minister's just announced plans to introduce legislation to move the decision-making process from councils to DHBs. 80% of Dunedin's water is already fluoridated, but treatment plants covering areas such as Mosgiel, Karitane and Outram are not. Thompson was involved in a study that showed tooth decay, and he says it was a lot worse in unfluoridated areas. For
Mosgiel children, Mosgiel and Outram, it was something like 1 in 23 children aged under 6 were having to be treated under general anaesthetic in hospital for dental caries. In the wider Dunedin area, it was 1 in 88.
Thompson says there are huge benefits in fluoridating public water as it wards off tooth decay and can save expensive dental bills. 40% of Kiwis under 5 have had a rotten tooth, and Thompson says more needs to be done at a higher level.
Anything that we can do at a public health level to help reduce people's disease experience is going to help society.
The SDHB hasn't commented on preferences yet, but Commissioner Cathy Grant says should legislation go through, the Health Board will look at how to handle it when the time comes. Annabelle Dick, 39, Dunedin News.
A local sportswoman is among a number of Kiwis to receive the highest accolades in cricket. Whiteferns captain and Dunedin resident Susie Bates has just been named the world's leading female cricketer, and she's hoping the recognition further promotes women's involvement in the sport.
Chatting cricket off the pitch. Local athlete Susie Bates is reeling after being named the top female cricketer in the world.
I've played cricket for over 10 years at that level, and you just go about trying to win as many games as you can, and there's such good cricketers around the world to be named that you sort of pinch yourself that you're recognised as one of those. So yeah, you don't think about it too much, but when it happens it's pretty special.
3 New Zealanders received awards from Wisden Almanac, a yearly international cricket publication. Black cap Kane Williamson is the leading men's cricketer in the world, and Dunedin Rays Brendan McCullum is one of the top 5 players of the year. Black Caps coach Mike Hesson, who's also from Dunedin, says it's an amazing achievement for New Zealand cricket.
For such a small cricket community, I guess, to have the best men and women cricketer recognised by Wisden, and also to have 2 black caps in for the first time ever in our history is great recognition for the players.
Bates is the first female Kiwi to receive the award. She says her proudest moment was her 6th century made against England in February, but she's crediting team members and their performance over the past year in helping her achieve the accolade.
I think just the way women's cricket's going, it's just exciting that the profile of the game is going up, and this award, I think, symbolises that, and it's more just about getting on and trying to be even better than I was before. And
players can only make the Wisden list once in their lifetime, and New Zealand cricketers are ecstatic to have nabbed the top spots. Annabelle Dick, 39 Dunedin News.
Still to come on Southern Newsweek, a military farewell brings the city to a standstill, but it won't be the last time the regiment's colours are seen. And a glamorous persona is about to be brought out of retirement for a special one-off gig. Welcome back. The final farewell of the New Zealand Scottish Regiment brought the central city to a standstill. A large parade and formal ceremony was held to lay down the regiment's colours in Dunedin for good, but it won't be the last time they're seen locally.
Farewelling an important part of military history. The colours of the New Zealand Scottish Regiment, which began in Dunedin, have been formally laid to rest at a public ceremony. The event marks the disbandment of the last components of the regiment, which formed in 1939.
During that time, thousands of New Zealand citizens served in that unit and served under those colours. And the colours represent the spirit of the unit. And so by laying up the colours is the final part of saying goodbye to this unit. And so we need to honour all of those Kiwis who had served in the unit.
A large-scale parade, months in the planning, helped bring the uniquely coloured flags through the CBD to their final resting place at Toitu Otago Settlers Museum. The city was described by Mayor Dave Cull as the most fitting place for the regiment's final farewell, and those in the Defence Force agree.
I guess Dunedin being the home of Scottish traditions in New Zealand, appropriate that A, the Scottish Regiment was sort of based here, and then B, that the colours are now laid up here and will be available for the citizens of Dunedin to view in the future.
A large crowd gathered to view the march through central streets, acknowledging the service of fellow citizens. Lieutenant Colonel Gibbons says regardless of people's personal views on the Defence Force, it's vital they recognise this end of an era.
I think it's important just to acknowledge that people do choose to serve. No one in New Zealand is forced to do so. And so, you know, all these thousands of people who had served in the unit volunteered to do so. So I think it is it's appropriate for definitely us to do so. And I think from what we saw on the streets today, the fantastic reception that we got, and so that was great.
The colours are now permanently housed at Toitu and will be brought out for Anzac Day each year. Their storage ensures they're well preserved for future generations to view and learn about a significant slice of local history. Ruby McAndrew, 39 Dunedin News.
An exhibition showcasing the movers and shakers of a large local suburb is underway at the Community Gallery. The People of South Dunedin display is a photographic essay celebrating 34 significant figures, and the creators hope to remove stigma surrounding the area.
Putting their best face forward, these photographers are looking over a project they've spent the last year creating to showcase figures in the South Dunedin community.
It's a collection of 34 portraits of people who call South Dunedin significant in their lives, either as a resident in the past or in their work, or they've lived there currently.
All types of people are being exhibited, from former school principals to retired doctors and politicians. Photographers organically chose who they wanted to focus on by chatting to South Dunedin residents and getting passed on. More than 500 people have already visited the exhibition, which opened in the weekend. Alan says these residents are an important part of enhancing South Dunedin's identity.
This is a collection of portraits of people who have a story to tell, and we want to tell those stories and get people to know them, that South Dunedin has got a lot to be proud about.
Alan says there are misconceptions and stigmas surrounding the South Dunedin area that the exhibition is trying to battle. He says although it is one of the lowest socio-economic suburbs in the city, there are many positives that he's trying to showcase.
We've got to overcome that stigma of South Dunedin is a bad place to be. It's actually a fantastic place to be, and we need to protect it, we need to support it, we need to say, well, there's some really good things happening out there, there's some really great people out there, and we need to celebrate that.
He's urging residents to visit South Dunedin after viewing the exhibition, which runs until Sunday. Annabelle Dick, 39, Dunedin News.
A local couple have been busy rounding up performers and music fans for a charity tribute concert. Various Dunedin bands and guests performed David Bowie favourites at a one-off gig recently, and one fan brought back an inspired persona especially for it.
Brushing up on a little Bowie. University music